My name is Holly Kramer, and I wanted to thank everyone today for coming out and listening to our webinar about how Trelligence Affinity can help you in your conceptual design process. Just for those of you who are not familiar with the software, the format of today's webinar is going to include a few slides at the beginning just to give a kind of an overview of the concept behind Affinity, a minute or so about all of the features that Affinity does offer, and then we'll get into the live portion, which will focus directly on the topics relating to today's webinar. So with that, I'll go ahead and begin. Schematic and early design usually consists of various software platforms, sketches, and schemes, and the problem with that is a lot of times the tools that we designers use do not necessarily talk well to each other. The early design phase is done very quickly, and we tend to have to reproduce models and sketches and schemes over and over again, and a lot of times that creates one-off tasks. You use it for one thing and then it gets thrown away and you have to redo it again for the next phase. It represents wasted time and effort. Most of the software that were used by designers today weren't necessarily created for them in mind. So things like Excel or SketchUp or Rhino or any of the other tools that may get used really were adapted by designers today, and they weren't specifically made with our needs in mind. Having said that, Trelligence Affinity is a tool that was created for the AEC market with the special attention paid to the fact that there is wasted time and effort and how we can better integrate your workflow. Many of the one-off tasks that do get produced when you use other softwares that don't integrate with each other actually can be reused and integrated with various other softwares when you use Trelligence Affinity. The four main features of Affinity include programming, which allows you to bring in your program requirements, anything from departments, sizes, quantities, adjacencies, furniture requirements, HVAC, electrical requirements, anything like that. You can bring that in, store that, and keep track of it in Affinity. There's the early design portion, which we will be talking about mainly today. So that's conceptual design, anything from very early conceptual to slightly more finalized plans, our integration with SketchUp, building organization, so stacking diagrams. There's a BIM integration portion. Today we'll be talking mainly about our Revit integration, but we do integrate with other software. And there's a design validation portion. Because programming and design are in the same software and they are tied together, it is very quick and easy for us to validate whether you're meeting your program requirements. We work off of the concept of templates, which you can think of as kind of like the database of your program file. So anything from standard space types, standard reports, standard property information that you need to keep track of, even standard boilerplate templates that you might use when working with a client. Any of that kind of information can be stored into a template and then get reused from project to project. And then there's also a collaboration portion, which allows people to work in a team environment, multiple people working on one file at a time. And this is similar to Revit's central file system. Today we'll be talking about the early design, a little bit how that relates back to programming, and then a little bit on how that relates back to our BIM integration. When you're thinking about early conceptual design, a lot of times designers come up with a design before there's ever a program. So, when we're typically talking to clients, we're talking about it as if you start with a program, there's a linear workflow, program, begets design, and design gets, developed throughout the process. But in reality, a lot of times a design has to be done maybe sometimes before you even have a project. this example that's on the screen here is actually a design that was done for a design competition for after Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. So, if you think about, this person went in, made a model, put in walls, windows, all that geometry, and that was strictly for a design competition. That sort of thing happens all the time to win a project. And, you know, this type of thing can happen maybe after you've won a project and to help your client finalize a program, to help them figure out what the direction the design's going to go. Um, you know, a lot of times designers will work with a software such like, what's on the screen, SketchUp. And, you know, we do integrate with SketchUp. It is a two-way link. So you can take your SketchUp model, bring it into Affinity, and take an Affinity model and bring that back into SketchUp to, further redo the modeling or maybe, render the building for a presentation. The way our SketchUp integration works is you take your SketchUp model and you have some scan features, and what it does is it actually scans the model for enclosed rooms, and then what it determines is an enclosed room. When you bring it into Affinity, as I'm showing here, it will actually create that geometry, and you can see individual little rooms there. And if you flip to a floor plan, what it's doing is taking all those enclosed spaces, figuring out their location and size, and it's numbering them 1 through whatever the final number is. So this way I can go in and I can start, assigning something a name. I can call this an entry, or whatever the other space might be. So you can begin to start taking that design and making some sense of it. After you've brought it in from SketchUp, you can actually continue to further the design if you want to. You can take any of the spaces and manipulate them, add new spaces, change the size of them, and then if you need to go back and present that new design back to your client, you can take this back into SketchUp and re-render it for their approval. So if you are a firm that uses SketchUp, you now can take your SketchUp model and bring that into Affinity and actually do something with it past that early design presentation stage. Likewise, you can do the same thing with a Revit model. Some designers will actually design models in Revit. And what I have here is a 2-story gallery file. It's not a very big file. It's just basic, walls and rooms. And what I can actually do is generate an Affinity model, much like what you saw with the SketchUp, generate an Affinity model based off of that Revit model. So all I have to do is sync it and go design to Affinity, and it's going to take just a couple of seconds here. And what you'll see is that it's creating floors and rooms, and it will actually create a basic generic model back in my Affinity file. So let me pull up that correct file, and when it's done refreshing, I can pull up the new floor. You'll see that it's got some new floors in it, and I can pull up the 1st-story gallery, and here it is. Here's my floor, and just like I did back in SketchUp, I can take any of these, I can manipulate them, change the size, rename them if I might want to, and do anything I need to. I can also choose at this point if I want to tie it back to a program. If I had a program, I could start assigning those to different program items. This particular file doesn't have one in it, but I could do that if I wanted to. So what I've just shown you here is examples of if you're using an external tool besides Affinity to create a design, what you can do, bring that in, tie that to a program, begin to do validations, actually take it from there and do something with that. Now, what I'm going to show you now is, let's say that you have, a client that doesn't have a program, and you're going to do design directly inside of Affinity. We provide for you some generic spaces. And what you can do is actually drag those out into the design and just begin to design with them. Talk about standard space types that they might have, generic layouts, typical arrangement, that sort of thing. You can just do that all in Affinity without a design. So here I'm going to take our generic room, and it comes out as a 10 by 10, 100 square foot room. I can drag out as many of these as I want to, and I can actually, drag out. I have entrances and hallways, elevators for multiple story spaces. I can drag out any of that and just start designing. And I can change these sizes, so I can, say, oh, it needs to be about to this size. There are different ways that I can adjust the size of it. I can also come over here and be specific about the size. I can say that I want it to be 10 feet by 20 feet, and it becomes a 10 by 20 room. I can also come over and change that to say, okay, if this is the size that you guys like, I can rename that to say that it's an office. And this space type can actually be used as a space type that can get reused in the future. So I can actually, if I like that size, I can click on that and tell it to save to the template, and this could be saved into my library of spaces for future use, used in the program, or just use in this format from the design. So here I am going to add it to the office, or add it to the library as an office, and you can see over here on the left that it appeared. And when I drag that out, it'll actually come out at the 10 by 20 that I have specified. If I use it as a program item, it will come in as a 10 by 20 office, and I can now go to my client and say, okay, now that this is your standard office size, I want 3 of them, or I want 5 of them, and that size and area will come in with it. Also, I know I'm showing you squares and rectangles, but you aren't limited to that. I can actually do different shapes if I want to. I can add a straight pull point and do a point there. I can grab the green dot and do a curved edge if I want to, and I can actually save that size as my space type if I want to. So whatever the size of the shape is that you need, you can do. I can also take squares out of a room if I need to indent for an entry. We give you some tools that will actually allow you to cut in those kind of shapes. Another thing that you might want to do when you're working out with your clients is typical arrangements of spaces. Here I have an example of a nurse station, and as you're meeting with them, you might decide, okay, well, we're going to have these nurse stations. This is the good layout that we like, and these need to be repeated throughout. You can do this just like I did with the previous one by dragging out generic rooms and just renaming them to whatever pieces I need, and just arrange them in a layout just like this. Just change them to whatever size they need to be and rename them. So once you've come to an agreement on the layout that you like, you can then copy and paste that into what we actually call as a layout, and that layout can then get dropped out onto a floor plan as one unit, or it can be used in a program as one unit. So here I have is a layout called a nurse station, and By default, they'll be blank. Here I have remnants of my practice, but I can just go to my layout that I did on a story and copy and paste it into the nurse station. And here you have my work. Here you have the work that I did on the floor plan now preserved in a layout. And if I go to a story, this can be drug out just as that piece shows. And I can drag out as many as I want, and they'll come out as one group that can then be moved together. And then here in the program I can add them as an item if I choose to. Normally I would choose a room, but here I could actually choose a nurse station if I would like. Another thing that you're going to have to work through with your clients is all of the different design iterations that you're going to go through. Clients go through multiple changes to their plans, and from working with design options in Revit, it is very difficult. It's difficult to determine what's going to be in what. When you're at the end of the day, you have all these different options that might have one piece in one piece in the other that gets accepted. You got to go through and accept the primary, and working in and out of the main model, there's a lot of cleanup that has to happen. I've been involved when they give you the model with all that stuff, and you got to go in and clean it up, and it is really hard to go in and kind of figure that stuff out. Well, Affinity actually has scenarios which do the same thing, but they're actually a lot easier to work within. Because our rooms are little self-contained rooms, it's very simple for you to say, okay, this is in one room and this is in the other room. So the benefit of using Affinity to do your design options is also the fact that at the end of the day, when they decide, okay, this is the design we want to go with, you can choose what goes into Affinity, or I'm sorry, into Revit. You don't have to have it all in Revit and then take the time and go and clean it all out. You can actually just go and pick what you want, and just what you want goes in there. So the way that I did this is, we drug out spaces that we had and we just created a floor plan. So here's your floor plan that you're presenting to your client, but now you want to do a second option. So you can go in and create as many options as you want in this menu. Here I have a scenario B, and all I have to do is flip between the two and I can see the differences. The way that this is done is you basically just drag out a space, and you can tell it what scenario it goes into. So here is a space, and because I drug it out with scenario B active, it automatically comes out at scenario B, but maybe I actually want that to be in scenario A. So I can actually click this here and choose it to go into scenario A. And with a couple of flips of this and some refreshes, I see it here in scenario A, and then I can flip back to scenario B and see that it's gone. So that's a quick little easy way to assign spaces. You can do a space to multiple design options if you had more than the two, and you can select multiple at one time if you wanted multiple rooms to be in the same option in the exact same place. One of the things that you might find yourself needing to do with your clients is to figure out what the vertical organization of the building might be. Maybe you know what departments you have, but you don't really know where they're going to go. So one thing you can do before the program is finalized as far as what goes in those departments, you can actually create a generic department, just like we did with the dragging out a generic room onto a floor plan. You can drag out our generic group space and rename it. Call it HR, call it admin, executive, whatever the name of the group is. You can resize it to whatever the approximate size you think it might need to be is, or it could just be a generic 1,000 square feet as a placeholder. And then from there, you can actually start looking at the adjacencies that you and your clients have discussed. You can drag out and create the instances of all the departments that you have, and you could choose to put them all onto story 1 if you want to. If you happen to know how many floors, maybe you're doing a core and shell and you know that you've got 4 floors to work within, you can create 4 stories, or you can just put everything on story 1 and come to a stacking diagram. And from there, you'll see a view that shows all these colored boxes which represent your departments at whatever size you've specified them to be. This is not a section through the building, this is strictly a area representation of how your building is organized. So from here you could actually begin to start dragging things and moving them up. In this particular case, this is a model where we've got a 6-story design with different spaces already assigned to all the floors. But I can actually come in here and grab a department and move it up. If I needed to create new stories, I could drag it to the very top, and it'll automatically create a story 7 for me and place the specified department on that story. I could rearrange them. I can move this one down here, and it now adds it. Another thing that you can do is, if you knew that you had a central core, elevators, stairs, that sort of thing, or that 2 departments needed to be on top of each other for some reason vertically, you can actually start to represent that. If this product development needed to be right over this product research, I can drag it over and start designing things in a horizontal fashion, so that this is more of a graphic representation of how the building might be organized, but it corresponds to the actual departments that you're going to have, and if you have a program in there, it actually corresponds to the sizes that you have. So this is a really quick and easy visual tool that you can use with your clients to begin to talk about how your design is going to be organized and what is going to end up being where. Something else that you can use Affinity for after you've brought in a SketchUp model or a Revit model, maybe you don't really have a formalized program, or maybe you just have a basic idea of what your program is, but you've been doing a design all along, and you want to go ahead and use that design to help you figure out what all the spaces are and what the areas are. So you've got a full floor plan. What you can do is actually, we provide you some scripts that you can run that will actually read the model and determine a program based on the spaces that you have in it. So we have 2 of them, and you've got one for area, which will read all of the spaces with similar areas and similar names and create those as line items with a quantity in an area. And then we've got another one that will be strictly quantity based, and it will go ahead and read those for read your program for quantity of rooms, and it'll put those in as those types of items. And I'm not going to actually run it here because this particular model already has a program in it, and I don't want to override that. But it would generate a program just like you see on the left there. So in this particular model, like I just said, we do have a program in it, and probably the case of this is where you're working on a design, you're developing concepts and relationships and where things are going to go, sizes of things, and at the same time you're trying to formalize a program. Maybe you're formalizing the program in Affinity, maybe you're formalizing it in Excel. And once that gets done, you've got a program and a design that aren't necessarily connected. And now you need to figure out, okay, is this design that I've been working on, how does that match up to that program that I've now finalized? You can actually take that design that you've been doing and figure out how well it matches up to the program that you've been finalized. Or maybe, you've did some spaces in design that you forgot to put into the program. Or, maybe you added programs into, rooms into the program that you forgot about. Here I can actually start to match up my design to my program in order to validate. I can pick any of the spaces from the left navigation pane here. So I'm going to choose the restroom, and I can go and find them in my plan. And as you'll see, when I go through and match them up, you'll see that it's turning at the color that I have it in the program. Because I do have a program in this file, I have gone ahead and assigned those departments a color, as you'll see here. And that's a really quick and easy way for me as I'm going through my plan to say, okay, as I go and assign these to a program item, they get assigned a color. So let me just go ahead and pick a different group and assign that one. And it looks like I may have picked one that was actually gray. And yeah, so so after you're done going through and matching all of those items, maybe you now want to see, okay, what's left in my program? How does this actually meet up against my program? So I can go back here and I can view this matching items icon. And what that's going to do is you'll see all of those spaces at the top in the italicized font. Those are all design spaces that do not match to a program item. And there's a lot of them in this example because I only did about 6 in my plan a second ago. So you would typically have a lot less than that. But it's a very easy way for you to see, okay, these are design spaces that don't match a program item and I got to find a place for them. Or maybe I need to create a program item for them. The other thing that I can do is I can actually go up here to view warnings, and everything that gets highlighted red is actually going to tell me, okay, this one is missing design or it's short on design. So if you have all of your design spaces accounted for and you go and hit that warnings icon and something comes up pink, then you're going to know, oh, this is a program item that I'm missing in my design and I need to go back and fix that. So it's a really easy way for you to be able to take that design that you've been working on, whether in another program or just separately from your program, and be able to know that the design you're doing is matching what your needs are and that you don't need to start over from scratch when you go to a next phase. The last thing I'd like to talk about today is how we integrate with Revit. You know, one of the biggest time wastes, in my opinion, is having to translate the AutoCAD file or, you know, just some hand drawing stuff or, you know, a SketchUp model or something like that, and having to recreate that totally from scratch in Revit. Or, as I talked about previously, having to really do a ton of cleanup work in order to get a good startup model so that you can do DD and CDs in Revit. So one of the benefits for us is you can actually take your Affinity model and go design to or design from Affinity. So in that case, you can take that Affinity model that you've been developing, maybe it came from SketchUp and you put it into Affinity to then further develop it. Then you can actually use Affinity as a transition to bring your file into Revit. Once you actually match up that Affinity file to a program item, or in the case of a more linear workflow, maybe you created the design from the program items, there will be a connection between those design pieces and those program items. This way, when you bring this into Revit, those Revit rooms know what Affinity space that they're tied to and know what program item they're tied to. So you can very easily continue to work in Revit and see the validation process throughout. So it's a really great way for you to be able to take that time and effort that you spent in the beginning on your program and be able to continue to use that in a meaningful way when you're in Revit in the later stages. You don't have to stop, take out a good chunk of time and do manual validation. You can do it all from within Affinity. And the last thing that I'd like to talk about is how you can use your conceptual or the Affinity conceptual design tools directly inside of Affinity. When you link to an Affinity file that has a program in it, we give you a couple of tools that you can use if you want to do your design directly inside of Affinity. A lot of people will do their conceptual design in Affinity. So if you want to go ahead and do that, if you happen to have a program or the beginnings of a program, you can click on this toolbar icon, and from here it will actually show you your navigation pane of the program file, or of the program that you have in Affinity. And just like I drag and drop, I can actually drag and drop directly into Affinity. And everything is going to come in, if I have components in it, it's going to come in with components. It's going to be grouped, and I'll get a little error, but that's a Revit thing. It doesn't like the fact that they're grouped. And instead of being surrounded by walls, it's surrounded by room separation lines. And the reason we leave it grouped is so that when you drag it out, you can move things around just like you would in Affinity as its own little solid piece. So if you wanted to design and figure out where spaces were going to go or where departments were going to go directly inside of Affinity or inside of Revit, you can do that with our drag and drop feature here. Also, if you happen to have walls but you don't have the rooms, you can have it set to where this does not automatically group when dropped, and you can drag and drop the rooms themselves into the Revit model. But instead of dragging out a brand new room within Revit, this way you're dragging out a room that already ties to your program, and then you can just start doing whatever design you want to and don't ever have to worry about going back and forth between Affinity to create a early design if you would like to do your design directly inside of Affinity. And then a couple of other little things that this allows you to do is this table here will allow you to view your program, and so this is also how you validate. So if you want to view your program and validate, you've got your matching items icon, your warnings icon, and you can view all of this here within the Revit plugin. So this is a really great tool if you would like to be able to have Affinity validate things for you, keep track of your program, but you want to be able to do conceptual design in Revit. This allows you to do that. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and conclude my portion of it and allow Melissa to start to ask any questions that you guys may have. Thank you very much for your time today.
All right, thank you, Holly. If you have any questions, please enter them in the questions box at this time. We already have a few questions. The first is, can you integrate with any other design software besides Revit and SketchUp?
Yes, we do integrate with ArchiCAD, Bentley's EcoSim, and we will bring in AutoCAD backgrounds if I know a lot of designers will design in AutoCAD. So if you need to bring in an AutoCAD background, you can bring that in and put spaces on top of it and a snap and a line to duplicate that floor plan inside of Affinity.
Okay, the next question is there any way of showing relationships or flow diagrams in Affinity?
Yes, relationship diagrams are what I like to call the graphic representation of the data in your program. So I've got the program and I can flip it to a relationship diagram view. And from there you'll see all the different bubbles that represent the departments in your program. The sizes, the colors, all of that comes directly from the data in your program. I can double click inside of one of the bubbles, and from there it'll take me down to view the subdepartments, and then I can double click a second time and it'll show me all the different spaces. And the purple arrow that you see there, that is the relationship between these two spaces. If I click on this requirements right here, you'll see what it's, the requirement that's established between those two. And it's highlighted red because it's currently not being met in my design. The way that these get added is I can just select two spaces and right click and say add relationship and pick, distance 2 is one that we offer. And my window's off on the other screen, but I can type in a value, and now I've got a bubble, or I've got a relationship between the bubbles.
That's great. The next person asks, Can you show a little slower how you can create different room shapes, including L-shaped rooms?
Yes, we give you a couple of different things that you can do. So if I wanted to move this office and move this other one on top of it, if I needed to create an indent for an entry, let's say, I could do that by overlapping these two spaces. And one of the tools that we give you is called the exclude function. And what that does is it allows you to take a chunk out of a room that is an exact a square rectangle. So by doing this, I can select the one space, select the bottom, and go to Edit, Exclude Area. So now when I move this second office by itself, that shape is maintained. I could cut out a second piece if I needed to. There's several other types of commands that you can do. Another one is if you wanted to merge two spaces. You'll notice as I move those, there's a snap and a middle alignment that we give you. But if I wanted to connect these two spaces and make that wall in between disappear, I can actually go and merge the two entities. And now when I move them around, they actually move as one piece. So I showed you with layouts, but this is a way to actually just connect two spaces in the design, and they'll move around as one piece until I unmerge them.
And the next question is, how do we accommodate for vertical stair towers and elevators?
Yeah, we give you several out-of-the-box spaces that are multi-story spaces. So things like elevators, if I drag one out, these know that they can be on multiple floors. So when I go over to the right here, it says it starts on floor 1, and it goes up number of floors 2. I can change that to whatever number I need to change that to. And when I put it on, when I do that and I flip to another floor plan, it will show up. Now this file, the stories are a little bit backwards because of the way I did the sync. So let me see, let me just drag a new one out and see. Let's change this, see if that'll show up on the other plan. And no, this file is the stories are a little bit odd on this one because of the way that I did the sync, so it's not going to show up. But yes, that's what you would have to do. You would just adjust the floors, and it'll show up on another floor plan.
The next person wants to know, can you create room data sheets that include finishes, equipment, and accessories?
Yes. If I flip to a analysis, let me flip to another model, and then I'll flip over to an analysis tab, which is where we keep our reports. You can customize the reports, the room data sheets, because we have program and design information. It's really easy. We provide a lot for you. Here's one. Let me just click on one of these rooms, and if I hit OK, what it's going to do, it's going to pull up all the information based on how I've set up that report to look. So I might give it a second because there we go. Okay, so it's showing me all the properties that I've got stored into that room. Requirements, specifications, sizes, cost, MEP, any information that I've got. This is just one that we provide that we've set up to look like this. And you can add in as many custom properties as you want, have it ranged however you want. This is one of the things that people tend to customize the most, and it's one of the more time-consuming tasks that you guys have to provide. And like I said, this is a very quick little thing. The report that I showed you just now is one, but you can do as many. You can run one where it does one for every department if you want to. Scroll down, you'll see that it's got requirements listed. If I had furniture built into that program type, it would show it. whatever you want to make that report look like. Here, if I go to a departmental report, if I pick one of these departments, it will print a report for each of the rooms that are assigned to that department. So there it goes, it's finished, and if I scroll through, you can see the various rooms that are in that department that it is printing a report for. And that took just a couple of seconds. If I click on another one, you can see the way it looks. So no lines, no different colors, same basic setup, but these are just examples that we give you out of the box.
Okay, the next question is, when importing from Affinity into Revit, will there be any overlapping walls?
No. The way that it works is there is one wall. It reads the room boundary and it puts a wall around each room boundary. If the walls in your Affinity model are touching, or I'm sorry, if the spaces in your Affinity model are touching, then it will just put one wall between the two of them. If they happen to be spread apart, it will put a wall around that. So as long as there isn't gaps between them, for the most part there won't be, then there will be one wall between them. The wall size that it uses is the default wall, so it's the last wall that you drew with in Revit. So you probably want to coordinate the wall thickness that you plan on using in Revit versus the wall that you have your building set up to use in Affinity. But other than that, it all comes in with a single wall around everything, and then you can come and go and change the sizes of the walls to be whatever they need to be in the actual building.
And the last question that we'll get to today is asking if we offer a trial of Affinity.
Yes, we offer a 30-day trial. So what that is it's a full license of the software, and it's good for 30 days from the day that you install it. And you have all the capabilities, including the Revit plugin, running reports, printing, no file size limitation. But after that 30 days, it's not active anymore. You can still view your files, but you won't be able to do any work and save any work. During that 30 days, if we send out any upgrades, you have access to that, and you also have access to myself or whomever else from the support to help with any questions that you might have. So we're very happy to help you get the most out of your trial, because you do have 30 days, and we want to make sure that you get a good feel for the software and whether it will help you in your workflow.
All right, thank you very much, Holly. This concludes our webinar for today. We appreciate you joining us, and please contact us by phone or email at sales@trelligence.com if you'd like to arrange a full demo, or if you have any other questions, we'd be happy to help. Thank you, and have a nice rest of your day.